Alright, on today's episode, today's review, we have something of a special presentation for you. Not only am I outside, and occasionally there will be some gusts of wind and such because I'm going for more of a natural aesthetic today for some reason. Don't really know why. But we're gonna be reviewing something pretty special, and yeah, that's gonna be a Pittyvaich 29. I'm not sure if I even said that correctly, but yeah, pronunciations are not generally what I hope people go to the channel for. But with that said, this is the 2019 special release of Pittyvaich from Diageo. Diageo is, of course, the owner of many close distilleries. And why do I say that? Well, because Pittyvaich is a close distillery. Now, does it stand up there with the same ranks as Brora and Port Ellen? No, and on some level that might be because Pittyvaich is a Speyside single malt Scotch whiskey, and Speysides generally are seen as more easily approachable, simple, straightforward drams that are, in terms of Scotch, almost for the masses, although that's not even the best way of describing it. But yeah, it's not the most complex whiskey, I would argue, but at 29 years old, this is a really fantastic whiskey. Just a little bit about Pittyvaich. They opened in 1975, closed in 1993, which is slightly odd because the Scotch recession that knocked out the likes of Brora and Port Ellen, that happened in 1982 to 1983, give or take that time period, but they were still kicking for 10 years after that. And this is the product of whiskey distilled in, at the youngest, 1989. It's really exciting for me to get to review this on this channel. But it was double matured in Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso sherried seasoned casks. It was distilled, matured, and bottled in Scotland. I kind of messed up what I was going to say, but it is presented at natural cask strength, which in this case is 51.4% alcohol, and it is one of only 5,568 bottles. Now, that is a wider release, but then again, this is Diageo we're talking about. But it is still a rather impressive whiskey to get to review. So, let's do that. I do, of course, have some notes. And my goodness, this is a very delightfully colored whiskey. This is very much a whiskey to drink outside in the fresh breeze on a Sunday afternoon when I am recording this. You know, throughout all the times that I've had this, which it's been a few times in preparation of this, just because there are no reviews of this on the internet, or at least there's not really many in-depth reviews of this currently out, and I thought people would like to hear this. So yeah, I made sure to really think about what I was going to say about this whiskey before I reviewed it, and it's really only now that I am getting that Pedro Jimenez, that Oloroso, just really any sense that there's sherry involved with this whiskey. But just like the biggest note that I get on the nose is just this really bold caramel. It almost presents as a dulce de leche, which is kind of like if you put a thing of condensed milk into boiling water and let that really stew and let that condensed milk turn into a thick caramel syrup. You know, that is one way of making dulce de leche, and that is what my mind went to with this. There's a little bit of a milk chocolate syrup. Almost like a egg cream reminiscent. A perry note, but at the same time everything's so buttery, those two notes do occasionally get intermingled together in something that I would describe as a buttery baked pear. Something you would put on like a brie, some kind of salad with like brie or goat cheese, something like that. Almost like I'm not quite sure, but my mind's going to like a white grape skin, but it really could be any grape skin. Some sourdough bread. And of course, navel oranges, primarily that pith of a navel orange. Maybe more like the skin of a navel orange. You got the skin, you got the pith, and maybe you even have just a little bit of that pulp, just because you maybe cut it a little too. You were a little too fast and loose with how you cut the orange. It's primarily bitter, but it does have some of that key orange sweetness, is what I'm trying to say. But this is a very delightful whiskey to smell. It has this like perfumed attribute to it. Candied sweetness, just a real delightful. My mind's going to almost just like just walking on the beach with some kind of like candy, maybe even sea salt toffee. I'm forgetting the name of it, but I'll put a thing of it over here. Saltwater toffee, taffy. Keep saying toffee, but it's taffy. Saltwater taffy, I think. It's almost reminiscent of that. But let's try it. Okay, it's really taken on more of that sherry flavor today, which is very surprising for me. There's this bready, almost earthy note. Not earthy, but this, I can't quite describe it, yeasty almost note that is lingering as you're getting all of these sweet notes. You have this running bass line that is reminiscent of just this bready, yeasty, more mild kind of flavor. With that said, I do get more of that citrus pith, more of like a citrus oil, or even like an orange bitters flavor, like a shortbread biscuit. Or like a strawberry jam on a shortbread biscuit. Orange marmalade on buttered toast, which is really a delightful kind of note to get from a whiskey. This is something that a Paddington would rather enjoy, if Paddington would ever drink, which I don't imagine Paddington doing. There's a slight menthol note that appears, but what more so comes out of it is the tannic tongue tingle that I like to refer to from time to time. It's not an oaky whiskey. It's not overly oaky, especially, at least to me, considering the fact that it is at least 29 years old. baked and stuffed, lesser degree on the stuffed side, but it is somewhat present. Red apples, really stewed to where the skin is just kind of crumbling. Not crumbling, but is scrunched up and is basically falling off the apple. Slightly floral. All things considered, it is more of like an oily whiskey. It does have a real coating down the throat, but it is a real sweet coating that is down the throat. And with that, as the alcohol vapors rise up through the top of, they rise up, hit the top of the roof of my mouth, the smell that emerges, or at least the feeling that emerges with that is, it's not a taste, but the smell, the feeling, not quite sure how to say this, but it is reminiscent, that alcohol vapor, as it emerges back up my throat after swallowing it into the finish, but not quite the finish. There's something that is very reminiscent of just what I would describe as perfumed air walking into a old-fashioned, or not old-fashioned necessarily, but old-fashioned 1960s Marvelous Mrs. Maisel department store, that beauty section with all the perfumes going on at once, and how they all just kind of could form into like a just a singular, just pleasant smelling thing. That is very much what this is reminiscent of to me. It's a very creamy, very zesty whiskey, very delightful, but with the finish, it does lean a little more so into that fruity zest. It does dip a little bit into something of a licorice note, a little bit on the peppery side. There's definitely something that reminds me of tomatilla salsa, specifically the tomatilla salsa from my favorite restaurant, the Grub Hut in Manville, New Jersey. There is this Granny Smith apple I put coated in pineapple juice. Think a cut up Granny Smith apple that you've then soaked in some pineapple juice to keep it from browning, or even lemon juice and pineapple juice. Some cinnamon, of course, and of course some overly steeped tea of some nature that has then taken on a lot more of the tannins. But I'm going to quickly go to this and reference some of the notes they gave. The aroma is mellow yet shy with delicate fruitiness and dried flowers, beneath which lies a note of buttery sponge. The texture is ultra smooth, the taste rich with dried fruit, sweetness of golden sultanas. It becomes spicy with gunpowder tea and is drying overall. The long, smooth finish closes in a shake of powdered ginger. And I do get that. If I'm thinking about those notes, I will find those notes, but these were the notes more so that I was specifically getting. Arguably, the kind of tea that is being oversoaked is something of a gunpowder green tea. But yeah, this is a really delightful whiskey that I would definitely love to pour for anyone that I am familiar with at a time in the nearest possible future in which that is allowed. I'm not sure how to rank this. This is not something that anyone could go out and just buy. But if you're able to, or if you know someone with it, I would recommend trying it. And that's about it. Here are some more videos. Maybe I'll record outside again. Who knows? Also, did I mention I have a podcast? I do have a podcast. And you can find it in the description below. By the time this has come out, the first episode will have been released. And yeah, it's on the Joker. Our second episode, as it stands now, is going to be Old Boy, the South Korean classic from 2003. So look out for that. And if you have any drink recommendations of a cocktail that I could make in conjunction with Old Boy, comment that below.